Hey guys, we got this VW Golf. It's a 2009 Golf City, 4-cylinder, 5-speed manual transmission. We're going to be changing a clutch today in this thing. So you can see basically the way this one is, the subframe. It's got like a K-style subframe that sits in the back with one mount. This mount, all it does is keep the engine from rocking backwards and forwards. And the other two engine mounts, the main engine mounts, are at the top. They secure to these body frame rails that are part of the unibody. So I'm just gonna skim over the manual for you here so you can see transmission removal, and it's also gonna show some special tools that they want you to use as well, but we're gonna try to work around this because I don't have these tools.
Where was this car made?
This is made in Brazil. Volkswagen Golf City. So, yep, just basically want you to take a bunch of stuff off that's around the transmission at the top so you can gain access to things, remove the slave cylinder, but it says do not disconnect the lines, don't depress the brake clutch, just wire tie this thing up out of the way. And then a bunch of connectors and cables and stuff. Then we've got gear selector cables. So 2 of those we got to take off. Then this is the special service tool. It's just a big bar that goes over the top. It's an engine support. So it bolts to the engine, keeps the engine from falling because the transmission and the engine bolted together, mounts on either side, and that's just hanging in the engine bay. So if you undo all the bolts, those 2 pieces are just gonna fall apart, right? And we'll break things. The engine will probably destroy the body.
You'll get squished.
You get squished. So bad idea. And then yeah, just basically goes through, says take the axle shafts off, and there's a different contraption for the V6, but we're doing a 4-cylinder. Undo flywheel bolts, a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, so take the CV joint shafts off of the transaxle, just like so. They bolt on, and then there's also a support that holds the transmission. Here's a support piece that goes in place of that lower mount to sort of steady the engine. We're not going to use that. That's the special service tool plate, I think, that adapts to your transmission jack. And you get all these little spacer pieces that make the transmission sit perfectly flush, or sort of level. But we don't have any of that, so we're just gonna wing it. That's pretty much it. Here's some parts. We got the whole 9. So we got a new clutch release bearing. There's part number there. I'll give you show you a list of part numbers in a second for this thing. You'll probably want to call the dealer with a VIN because there's 3 different versions of this engine, and I don't know if they use the same transmission for all of them or not, but with these things there is multiple versions and build dates and stuff like that, so the parts change, so be careful. I would call the dealer with the VIN, ask them for a quote with the part number breakdown. And honestly, for all this stuff, we got flywheel, pressure plate, clutch, disc. We've got the fork, clutch fork. We've got a bunch of hardware that's one-time use. We've got a seal, a bunch of other small stuff. This was all about $1,000 Canadian. So, I mean, you get everything. It's not too bad. Everything's new. It's all OEM stuff from the dealer, so I mean, you go aftermarket, you're probably going to spend pretty close to the same. I mean, trying to find the flywheel and pressure plate and the clutch disc alone, I'm sure you're going to be up at least like $800. So you might as well just get all the stuff from Volkswagen. Then you know it's going to be perfect. So I think first thing I'm going to do, disconnect the battery. I'm going to lower this thing down and start undoing all the stuff around the top. All right. Okay, so we're just gonna take this air box out, so very simple. I'm gonna leave this together. There's Phillips screws that hold this together. You can see how rotten they are. And yep, just a bunch of connections, electrical connectors, and a couple spring clamps here, here, a bunch of them there. And I'm just gonna try to get this out, and we're gonna take the battery out. So. Oh yeah. Well, I see another 10 mil down there. And that should be it. Looks like there's some rubber grommet piece that's here. Oh yeah, like a champ. Boom. I forget how those are clipped on. Just like that. Kind of like slides forwards and up. And this, we gotta take these two screws out to pull this cover out to gain access to the bolt that's down there. Got the battery out. We might try to just check this slave cylinder and see if it's working at all, just to be sure before we go through all the paces of pulling the transmission out. Customer just wanted me to put a clutch in it. The clutch doesn't work, so there's a possibility that it could need a slave cylinder. So we're gonna check that. Alrighty, we want to, I don't know, I think I'm just gonna, well, I kind of have to get this out of the way. I want to take the starter out. I need to take the starter connections off. And we've also got this big power steering line. So the pump sits over here on the bottom, and it just basically runs around, does a little loop-de-loop for cooling purposes, and then runs back over to the steering rack that's back down there. So I think it needs to come out, it needs to move, but I think I'm just gonna start cutting some of these zip ties, loosen some of this wiring up so that we can sort of move it out of the way, undo these connections. We'll start undoing a bunch of these electrical connections. It looks like we have like a position sensor of some sort for the gear selector. And yep, let's do it. That's exactly how it goes. All right, we got a big, looks like a ground cable right here. 13, that's a 13. Wow, I figured that would have snapped off. All right, there's the one in the power steering line bolt off. Now we need to figure out how these come out. There's these little weird clips. You might have to watch a YouTube video. All right, the thing with these German cars is they look complex, but they're very simple. You just push up on that and disconnect. By lifting up on this piece right here, it allows that hole to go over that little stud, and then you can take this off. And then there's another clip back here that actually holds the cable into the brace piece, and it's just going to lift upwards. However, this one's super rusty and gross, so probably gonna try to scrape some of the rust off and hit it with some penetrating oil so we can get that out. I gotta take this cable off first, then I can access the bottom cable second. I'm gonna try hitting it with a screwdriver and a hammer, see if I can break that rust bond. Bring coolant hoses and stuff in the way. All right, these things are not coming off, so we're gonna just try to take these two bolts out and just take the bracket and leave the cables in the bracket. So we'll disconnect our slave clutch line here. That's a hard line, rubber line. And then looks like we got a couple 13mm bolts. We got I think this is a wheel speed sensor back here, or sorry, transmission output shaft speed sensor. And we've got a couple clips here we need to undo for this harness. There's another plastic retaining clip there. And then these bags are usually like buttoned up together. Yeah, the buttons are on the back side where you can't really see them. There's one. There's two. I'm gonna just get the trim tool. All right, so there's the speed sensor down there. Of course, they put the connector on the bottom where it's the most difficult to take off. You might be able to get a better view from the top. Okay, let me just tuck that up there, and let's get these two bolts out. Oh, looks like we got a third bolt there. Beauty, and then we can just sort of zip tie this thing up out of the road so it's not in our way. Now we should be able to remove this brace bar, and then we can take our slave cylinder off. Oh, should have zip tied those up. Ooh, this is rusty. We better put some oil on that. Man, that feels like it's gonna break. Anytime they put aluminum with steel, dissimilar metals, they like to corrode. Especially steel bolts into aluminum. They're just not nice to deal with half the time, especially on this old stuff. Hopefully this stud doesn't snap off. Oh, there's a bolt. It's just a nut and a bolt. All right, we're taking this shift shaft assembly off the top of the transmission. So we got to drop the angle of the engine and transmission down so we can get the transmission out. But this is going to run into the body, so we need to take this out. Now that we have 13mm nut on the top, and then we've got another one of these clips on the bottom. So we're gonna try to get that out. Without it twanging off somewhere. And I'm not 100% sure. This should just slide out of here, but at the same time, it's sort of linked into this thing. I might need to get a puller to pull that off. Okay. This thing's slowly coming out. I gotta get this one to go out first, and then this one can come up. But this bushing that's in here, it's a pretty tight fit. So, and I'm sure the corrosion and stuff doesn't help. This plastic sleeve, it just sits in there. So it's just gonna come out with it. But I was able to sort of work this up and down, which spins this back and forth. And while I was doing that, I used a hammer to just tap on the end, and that got it out far enough that I could then use a trim tool like this to stick it in between and apply force outwards while going up and down. However, there's that little bushing that's in there, and I just really don't want to destroy it, that's all. It is so tight. This thing, I just really don't want to break that. at all costs. So we'll just keep working this thing out. For this here, it seems to be on there pretty good. So I think I'm gonna try to find a puller that has 2 jaws that I can wrap around, push on that stud and separate this thing. There we go. Okay, that was a pain, but we got it. Actually, wasn't too bad. Without the puller, you're pretty much screwed. So, you got like an adjustable. It does 2 jaw and 3 jaw, and you can swap these arms around if you want a short grab or a long grab. So, 2 jaw, long grab. We got it off. We don't have to worry about marking it because it's master splined. So they put 2 of the splines together, so you can't mess it up when you put it back on. Now that we've got that off, we can take our slave off. All right, not enough room to stick a ratcheting wrench in there, at least not a snap-on one. A little extension. Alright, so I'm gonna try to see if I can just put some tape around this to keep this from springing out. And then I'm basically just gonna zip tie it up out of the way. And we're ready to continue. I think we're gonna take axles off next. Alright, I guess this one probably isn't gonna fall out. Most slave cylinders, the actual plunger can just slide out of the end, so I'm happy that this one doesn't do that. Alright, so I have to take the starter out because the bolts that hold the starter in are actually also bell housing bolts. What I want to do before I lift this thing up and go take these axles out is I want to like get as much done up here as I can so that I don't have to go back and forth. And I think what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to get the starter out, and then I'm going to take these other bolts out. There's one here and one here, so that the top bell housing bolts are out. It's totally fine to take like half of them out. The transmission's not going to like break in half with the engine or anything like that. So, and then that way those ones are all undone, so that when I'm ready to stick the jack underneath, I can just not have to worry about having the car up in the air or like have the jack underneath of there and then have to be like working up here. They'll all be prepped and ready to go, so that all I gotta do is like buzz this motor mount out and we should be good to go. Speaking of that, the motor mount does have to come out, so this top piece comes off, and then the bolts for the lower half, this piece here, they come in from the side, which is kind of a pain. I think what I gotta do is lower the whole assembly down enough that I can access those 2 bolts and get them to come out, because they have the frame rail like here and the 2 bolts are here, and they're not gonna come out unless I lower the transmission down enough to get them to come out. So let's get this starter out. 18mm bolts with the studs on them. Probably have 2 of them. Okay, this is the other starter bolt. We've got a 13mm nut that's on front that holds this bracket that's for your power steering, and then 18mm underneath. So we'll get this off, and And we're gonna take this other 13 millimeter bolt out that's over here. Also, that holds the power steering line on. I'm gonna try to take this transmission out without removing that, because if I disconnect it, it's gonna bleed transmission or power steering fluid out. And that means I'm gonna have to add it and bleed the system. So it'd be really nice just to leave that sealed. Yeah, there's the power steering line. We got this bolt out now. Now, the two starter bolts are the same length, so you don't have to worry about that. This is the very top of the transmission that had the ground wire on it. And then this is the one when you're doing the top bolts that's at the very back. So try to just keep those in order so we know which way they're supposed to go. And then might have to stick something in the brake rotor to keep this from spinning. All right, I think these are 8 millimeter triple square, and I've just got these Blue Point sockets. They're not as long as I would like them to be, but they still work. You can see the angle of the axle where, like, I'm not going to be able to get them from the bottom, but the top ones, if you position it so the socket's at the top, then it's no problem. Just make sure that they're seated all the way. So we're going to go around, take all these bolts out, and the axles will come out, and there'll be just the stub shaft that's left in the actual transaxle, the diff portion of the transaxle. So I'm just gonna go around and work all these out. Taking the passenger side bolts out now. Yeah, so we got these axles off. This one I'm not too concerned about. It can just hang out. I might even just zip tie it up out of the road. This one, I'm gonna see if I turn this wheel, I might be able to, of course the steering's locked. I might be able to sort of fish it down and out this way, but that's where the transmission is going to be coming anyways, so it would be nice to actually just take that axle out of there. We'll see. All right, I'm going to take this mount out now. 13 millimeter bolts here, 18 millimeter bolts here. Nice, there's one. And there's two. Sorry, they're 16 millimeter. And then, yeah, about that. So this mount just really isn't going to come off. It's so corroded in there. Those bolts are just seized in the actual mount. Like, there's no heads. They should just come off. They're not threaded on the inside or anything. There's just such a bond with the corrosion. I tried to heat them up with a torch, but you know, it's just going to start cooking the rubber. And yeah, I was just trying to work it with the air hammer to see if I could break some of the corrosion up, but it's just really not doing anything. So the mount's pretty much screwed. I think what I might try to do is just like ratchet strap this down as far as I can and see if I can just drop the engine down as far as I can, enough to get the transmission out. And if that doesn't work, then I guess the only other thing I was thinking of is like cut a couple slits in it, but it's just gonna have to get replaced. It's just sucks, that's all. All right, so I think I only have a few bolts left before this thing's going to split in half. So I'm going to get my jack stand to hold the engine. I'll stick a block of wood here, sort of distribute the pressure across the oil pan, even though this car's obviously hit something and dented the pan in. And then we'll get the transmission jack and put that underneath the transmission so we can take these bolts out. We've just got like 3 bolts holding it in. So this one, and this one. And then this thing should separate. I just have to undo those upper motor mount bolts, but obviously I need to get everything set up to hold it. And then we'll go ahead and go up top and take those bolts out. All right, so I'm just gonna stack some wood up, I guess, underneath the transmission. But before I do that, I'm gonna pull these 2 bottom ones out because I'm not gonna be able to get to them once I put the wood there. So I just stuck another bolt back in the back. And so I'm only gonna take these 2 very bottom ones out. I might throw one more bolt just in at the very top, just for a little reassurance. I just take both of those out. Off there. Just sticking some wood underneath here to support the transmission.
Should you buy that special bracket and do it safely?
Oh, of course, yeah, for sure. I'll put a link in the description. Just kidding. Okay, now I guess I should undo that mount. I gotta take the mount out first. I have to get my impact gun for this. I better just check my wood. Okay. All right, motor mount bolts are out. We are free to go down now. And then we can take these last 3 remaining bolts from the bell housing out, which means that we can take the transmission off. Woo! All right, we're gonna take these bolts out. Hopefully they don't snap off. And this is just for the mount, the lower portion of the mount. Screw in the way. Might need I gotta move. I don't know if this is gonna come out. Might have to try the impact gun. One. I gotta break that one by hand. All right, we got the 3rd bolt loose. Motor mount. So they have that axle shaft, the stub shaft there, and they have this stupid little block that sticks off of the back of the engine block. It's actually one of the mounting bolt holes, and it sits right in between the axle stub shaft and the transmission housing. So you have to like just rotate the transmission in order to get around it. It's slightly inconvenient, but you know, Volkswagen things. We're pretty close, it's tight. We're almost clear of the flywheel. Man, I hate working on these things. So yeah, it's gotta like come back and then like around kind of thing. It's close.
It's angled pretty harsh.
Yeah, it is. It's because it's sitting on the subframe right now. I need it to come forwards, but I can't because the bell housing is just gonna run into like the fan shroud. And then this thing's gonna be in the way. All right, so to make clearance for this thing, I did undo the subframe bolts, all 4 of them. I didn't completely take all of them out. The one that's in the driver's front corner, I did take completely out. That's gonna gain you about 1 inch of clearance for the subframe. The subframe's gonna really block you because it runs up against this right here. So you have to get this differential part of the transaxle up and over this hump right here. Now, the other thing that's gonna kind of screw you is this stub shaft that comes out. The clutch sits in behind it like this. So you have to sort of get it out and around. And we tried a bunch of different ways. The only thing we found that kind of worked was just use the pry bar. And while jiggling it, we kind of just brute force worked it past. So that's how we ended up getting that out. All of these marks and stuff here, those were not from us. Actually, it might have just been from the teeth. That's what it'll be from, the teeth on the ring gear. So yeah, it was from us. So yeah, we did get it out. It's possible to get it out, but yeah, you gotta put quite the drastic angle on the engine, and you're also gonna have to drop the subframe, and it's just a bit of a bear to get out. So we do have it out now though. So I'm just gonna leave this thing on the transmission jack. We're not gonna take it off. And we can change our clutch right here. We're gonna put our new throwout bearing on here and new arm. So we'll let's buzz that pressure plate off, take a look and see. Okay, so we're gonna take this pressure plate off now. These are 9mm triple squares, which I thought was interesting. Frig, man, she's stuck on the dowels pretty good. Clutch actually doesn't look too bad. Still got decent material. Bunch of hot spots. Splines don't look stripped out at all. No broken springs. Interesting. Hit that with a hammer. Okay. All right, so these holes are not equally spaced. You can see we've got 2 holes that are a little bit closer together. So we're just gonna set this up here. And then we've got brand new hardware, pre-Loctited from our friends at Volkswagen. We're just going to start all of these by hand, and we can snug them down and torque them. Oh, these are different. All right, so first step, torque all of them down in an equal pattern, 44 foot-pounds. Then we need to do an additional 90 foot-pound or 90-degree turn. So these are a torque to yield bolt. I need a bigger ratchet. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and mark that one. So that I know that one's done. Then I'm going to go ahead and do this one and just do it in a star pattern so that everything's torqued down equally. All right, so I don't have a clutch alignment tool because I bought the parts from the dealer. It doesn't come with one because it's an SST at the dealer, right? Special service tool. Normally when you buy an aftermarket clutch, they'll give you a little plastic dowel that's splined that goes inside of here. It's an alignment pin that lets you stick it in like that so that it aligns the clutch, because the clutch can move around in here, right? So if you don't use something to align this and then put the pressure plate on and tighten it down, this clutch might get tightened down like down here like that. And what happens is when you go put the transmission on, your input shaft will hit like here and it won't go into the splines where it's supposed to. So I found that this 15 millimeter deep 12-point snap-on socket fits like exactly perfect. So I'm going to be using that as my alignment tool, and it moves around a little bit, but so will that other thing you got. So now I'm just going to throw the pressure plate on there. We'll get the bolts started and then we can torque those down. Now, there's my dowels. That's gotta go like, is that right? Am I doing that right? Right, except it's got to be clocked in the right position. So it's probably offset, so this has to rotate. Let me pull this off and check this. So I'm just going to mark that with my paint pen so that I don't lose track.
Explain that.
So these holes are not perfectly apart from each other. So I'm just going to mark this with this. They have a certain orientation that they need to go. You can't go over like that because the holes just don't line up. So it has to be like this. For whatever reason, don't ask me why they do it like that. I guess probably for balancing reasons, I'm gonna guess. If I had to guess, it's probably for balancing. They've probably machined the the flywheel or whatever, or balance this, like everything's got an order that it needs to go in. So now that I see that, I'm ready to put the clutch in there, and we'll put this on now. All right, and then we just try to make sure that this is relatively in the center, which looks like it is. Here, then I'll put the rest of them in. All new hardware. All right, when you tighten these things down, you want to make sure that you do it in a nice even pattern. All right, so these things here, they get torqued down to 15 foot-pounds each. And we'll do that once again in a star pattern. All right, we're just gonna take this inner sleeve off. We got a new one, and they are triple square, 8mm, 3 of them. So yeah, the old one just slides off. Slide the new one on. Make sure the mating surface behind it is clean, which in this case it was. It also acts as a seal as well to keep the transmission fluid inside of the transmission. All right, I'm going to torque these down to 11 foot-pounds. And now we're ready to install our bearing here. We're going to put this on our new arm, and we also have a new spring for it as well. How the spring goes on, make note of that. Just pop that off. Wipe any of the dust and dirt and stuff off. Just like so. And I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on there as well just before we put the arm on. All right, we've got our arm, got our bearing. This should just pop in here, hopefully. The back of it is made out of plastic, which is slightly concerning. Really don't want to break it. Can't go in from the side. There we go. And slide back and forth. Has to be within those ears, right? And now we can just put a little bit of grease. I'm just gonna put a little bit on there. A little bit around here. I'm just using some white lithium grease. A little bit on splines. Get the holes all greased up. Prevents any squeaks. Helps everything move nicer. Now we're ready to put this thing on. This piece must go in like so, I believe. That looks correct. Wouldn't you say? And then this clip just literally clamps around it. So I just kind of yanked it off when I was originally took it off. And if I just push it on. Does it? No, it's gotta go like this. Has to go like this. All right, so obviously I have short-term memory issues. So this clip piece goes on like this, pops in. Hopefully, my hands are all greasy now. Can we do it the other way? No, we can't. So it has to go on like that. This piece has to hook first. I need a flathead screw. Okay, just like that. And that's the clip that keeps this arm secured to the pivot. And I guess we just push this on here. All right, so that's pretty much it for the video. I just want to go over a couple things before we end here. Here is a list of torque specifications, and feel free to stop the video at any time in case you're looking for a certain torque. And that should be it. So yeah, we're just going to be putting this thing back in. Now obviously now's the time, if you're doing this, it's your car or whatever, now's the time to clean everything. You clean the inside of the bell housing and get all the clutch dust and material out of there. Clean the top of the transmission. Might be a good time to service the transmission and just clean everything up. And if you wanted to put seals in it and stuff like that, now's the time. Same with the rear main seal that's behind this flywheel. It wasn't leaking in this case, but obviously if it did leak, you're gonna have to do this job to get in there to change that seal. So yep, pretty much just gonna fight this thing. I'm so excited to fight it back into the car and just get everything bolted back up. I would recommend cleaning up any of the corrosion and stuff around any of the bolt holes, and also these dowel pins. You can see this dowel pin on this side has a little bit of marking on it, so we're going to be cleaning that up. That's just going to help aid in the installation. If you have corroded dowel pins or they're smushed like that, they don't like to go in the hole very nice. So I think that's pretty much it. If you have any tips or tricks or better ways to do it, or suggestions or comments or whatever, let me know in the comment section below. If you have questions, throw them in the comment section below. Hopefully this video helped you. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content, and we'll see you in the next one.